Hello everybody! Today's video will be an in-depth review of the Dingbats A5 Plus Wildlife Notebook. I've used this for almost 4 months now as my bullet journal, and I think I've formed a pretty good idea of what I think about this notebook. So let's start by going through some basic information about this notebook. So this has 100 GSM cream color paper, which are all micro perforated. There are 192 pages, and this is 100% vegan with hard faux leather covers. This has one bookmark, a pen holder on the inner side of the notebook, and an elastic closure. There are no page numbers, no pre-made pages, and in the back you have this small pocket. The size is a little bit larger than an average A5 notebook, and we will come back to that later with some comparison. I bought mine straight from the Dingbats website. They have a worldwide shipping option, and you can also find this notebook, for example, from Amazon. And this size retails for $19.95 in US dollars. I will now insert the same information from two other notebook brands I'm gonna compare in this video, which are the Leuchtturm 1917 and the Lemome hardcover notebook. Okay, so now that we have the basics out of the way, let's start to compare these three notebooks. I've used all of these as my bullet journal, so I'll share some of my personal experiences while using these notebooks in this video that I think might be helpful for you. So let's first take a look at the differences in the paper, which in my opinion is probably the most important thing when it comes to a bullet journal. So obviously I have the dot grid version from all of these, and the first thing I noticed after starting to use the Dingbats notebook was that the dots were actually really light and small, so they don't attract too much attention while you're using this notebook. You can see that in the Lemome, the dots are quite significantly darker, and even in the Leuchtturm, they are a bit more noticeable. I'd say that is definitely one of the best points about this Dingbats notebook, especially for those of you out there who want the dots to be extremely unnoticeable. Okay, so the next point we can also see here is the difference in the paper color. The Leuchtturm and the Lemome both have pretty light, kind of ivory color pages, but the Dingbats has slightly more yellowish or cream colored ones. That was one thing that was actually bothering me a little bit after moving to this notebook after using the Lemome for 8 months, but at the same time it's something I got used to pretty fast. This notebook opens pretty flat as they promise, and I haven't had any issues while using it. The pages don't stay completely flat though, so this is sometimes annoying when trying to take pictures of the pages, but it's not as bad that in the Lemome, for example, in which the pages stick up pretty badly because the paper in that one is pretty stiff. Okay, so when it comes to the size, both of the Lemome and Leuchtturm are standard A5 size notebooks, and you can see that the Dingbats is slightly wider than both of those, but the height is pretty much the same. I actually like that it's a bit wider, because in this notebook we have 2 extra dot rows horizontally compared to both the regular A5 size notebooks. I find this helpful, especially when drawing boxes to my weekly spreads, because you can fit all the days very easily and without needing to start exactly from the side of the page. I don't know if that is just my thing, but I can really appreciate those 2 extra dot lines. So now I think it's time for the part I know most of you are waiting for, which is of course the pen test. Personally, ghosting is one of my biggest pet peeves while bullet journaling, so we are gonna find out exactly how much ghosting each of these notebooks has. So let's start from the Dingbats, and just a reminder that this notebook has 100 GSM paper. I'm gonna start with 2 basic microns. Then I'm using this one mild liner, this Pride Kuretake brush pen, and then this very boldly red Tombow dual brush pen. And of course we need to test the black Tombow as well, which in my opinion ghosts like crazy. And lastly I'm adding in this Tombow Fudenosuke pen, which also ghosts and bleeds quite easily in my experience. The Dingbats did okay in my opinion, but you can still definitely see some ghosting here. I'll also insert a photo taken with my phone because I think my studio light makes the ghosting a little bit less visible in this video than it is in real life. So then we have the Leuchtturm, which has 80 GSM paper, and I'm using exactly the same pens here. And it was not a surprise for me that the ghosting was pretty bad in this notebook. I personally can't stand this level of ghosting while bullet journaling, and I've promised myself to never use anything below 100 GSM anymore. It's just so distracting to me, and you can see from this photo that it looks even worse in real life. So yeah, the Leuchtturm didn't do that well in this test. Then we have the Lemome, which has quite impressive 120 GSM paper. And we can clearly see that this notebook is the winner when it comes to ghosting. It's very minimal, but you can still see it a little bit. But honestly, while actually using this notebook, the ghosting is so unnoticeable that I'm sure it wouldn't bother you. So I'd say the Dingbats is somewhere between these two, and for me it's on the edge of what I'm willing to stand. As I said earlier, I changed to this notebook after using the Lemome one, so I could notice the increased amount of ghosting in the beginning, but it's not that bad that I would stop using this notebook. Next, I did a quick pleat through test, which I'm not sure if you can see on this video. However, I used my Fudenosuke pen again, and I tried how many times I can use this pen on the same spot before the ink bleeds to the other side of the page. It was a little bit difficult to see when it bled exactly because the amount was like really small, but I did the same test for all of the 3 notebooks, and eventually I could clearly see the small differences these had. What was surprising for me though was that the paper started to break really badly before any major bleeding, so that's maybe also something to keep in mind. The Lemome was the strongest in this category again, and the Leuchtturm didn't do as well as the others. Finally, we have my last test, which is a water test. So my dream would be to find a notebook which could handle watercolor as well, but at least for now I haven't found a bullet journal like that. I'm using actual watercolors and an actual watercolor brush for this test, and I didn't make it easy for these journals. I used water and paint pretty heavily, and also tried to blend the colors together a little bit to have a clear idea of how these behave with water. So I'm starting from the Dingbats again, and I've noticed while using this notebook that the paper doesn't handle water that well. I've been able to create some watercolor paintings or drawings while using this, so it's definitely possible, but you have to be so careful while doing it and use like the smallest amount of water possible. I let all of the pages dry and then tried to have a really close-up shot of the paper so you can see how much they started to break and form these little darker dots of loose paper. And yeah, this one wasn't the strongest with the watercolors. The paper definitely started to break up a bit, but as I said, you can still work with this if you really want. Next contestant is the Leuchtturm, and this one actually impresses me every time I try to use water on it. Keeping in mind that this one has the thinnest paper, it actually takes water pretty well for a bullet journal. After letting the page dry down, it looked a little bit smoother to me than the Dingbats did. You can still see how the paper broke apart a little bit, and also I've noticed since the paper is thinner, the page tends to get a little bit more wrinkly or wavy as well. Then let's do the same thing for the Lemome notebook, and this one is not the greatest with water either. You can see that the paper started to break up pretty badly, and you can see those darker spots quite clearly in this close-up shot as well. So I guess it's safe to say that using a real watercolor paper and then using glue or tape to attach that to your notebook is probably the best option with all of these if you want to use watercolors. Okay, but I think those are all of the things I have about these 3. To sum it all up, I'd say the Dingbats Wildlife Notebook would be a really good first bullet journal option. It does well in many areas, the paper is not as thick and stiff as in the Lemome one, so it's very nice to use. The width and the lightness of the dots are a plus from me, as well as the design and the fact that it's pretty reasonably priced and easy to get. There are many different color options, and then there's also this other Earth line which has more pre-made pages, page numbers, and some extras like that. The ghosting is not as bad that in the notebooks with 80 GSM paper, and even I've learned to live with the amount of ghosting in this notebook, so I would say it's not that bad. However, I wouldn't say that this is the perfect bullet journal. My dream journal would have a little bit thicker paper and lighter paper color as well. But other than that, I don't really have anything negative to say about this. I'm not sure if I will repurchase this notebook. I've already ordered my Archer and Olive notebook, which I'm probably gonna use next, and I can't wait to compare that one to these three. I really hope this review was helpful for you, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to leave those in the comment section below. And if you are into bullet journaling and would like to stay tuned for my monthly plan with me videos, please consider subscribing as well. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope all of you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!